All right, today we're jumping into a sermon that tackles a really big question, one that a lot of us are probably thinking about in this super connected, but sometimes lonely world. Do we still actually need the church? Okay, let's get into it.
So this entire message really boils down to this one powerful question. Can faith be a solo mission? Is it something you can really do all by yourself? Or are we missing something fundamental when we try to go it alone? The sermon makes the case that this isn't just a religious question, it's a deeply human one.
So the sermon kicks things off by pointing out this tension we're all living with. I mean, we live in this amazing age of convenience, right? We can get pretty much anything we want whenever we want it. But the message suggests that this convenience can trick us into thinking we're connected, when really we're just accessing things, instead of doing the messy but amazing work of being together.
And this quote right here, it just nails the problem the message is trying to get at. You know, technology lets us consume all this great spiritual content on our own time, but the sermon argues that just consuming content isn't the same thing as belonging to a community. Something really important gets lost.
Now, one thing this message does, and I think it's really important, is that it doesn't just ignore the tough stuff. It gets why people are skeptical. It starts by saying, hey, we get it. For a lot of people, that phrase, I love Jesus but not the church, comes from a place of real pain, from being let down by the very place that was supposed to be a safe harbor.
So how does the sermon respond to all of this? To the convenience culture? To the real hurt? Well, it builds its entire case on three foundational truths, making an argument for why community isn't just a nice little add-on, but absolutely essential.
So think of this as our roadmap for the next few minutes. The whole argument is built around these three big ideas: that the church was God's design from the start, that it's kind of like a spiritual gym, and that it's the place where God's presence becomes visible here on earth. Let's break each one down.
All right, first up, the idea that the church wasn't some human invention. It's presented as God's idea from the get-go. The original Greek word for church, ekklesia, literally means the called out ones. So the point here is that the original design was always for a people, a family, not just a building you go to or a bunch of individuals doing their own thing.
And to really drive this point home, the pastor tells this incredible story about visiting someone who said they didn't need the church. Instead of arguing, the pastor just quietly reached into the fireplace, took out a single glowing hot coal, and set it off by itself. And together, they just watched as that bright red coal slowly faded to gray and grew cold. The point was made, loud and clear, without a single word. We just weren't designed to burn bright on our own.
Okay, that brings us to the second big truth. So if the church is God's idea, then what's it for? Well, the sermon frames it as a spiritual greenhouse, or maybe a spiritual gym. It's the place you go to actually practice being who you want to be.
And the key metaphor the sermon uses to explain this is the body of Christ. This idea from the Bible is used to paint a picture of the community as being like one single human body, made up of all these different but totally essential parts. No one part is the whole thing, but every single part is needed for the body to work right.
And this is where it all gets super practical, right? Because the sermon points out, you can't really learn to forgive if you're all by yourself with no one to forgive. You can't practice patience if no one's around to drive you crazy. Community, with all its messy, imperfect people, becomes the only place you can really train those spiritual muscles. And when one part is missing, the whole body feels it.
And that leads us to the third and final truth in this sermon's argument. So beyond being God's idea and a place to practice, the church community has this really unique, powerful role to play in the world.
The sermon uses this verse to make a really powerful point. It's presented as this promise that when people actually get together in community, something kind of supernatural happens. The idea is that the community itself, through how they love and serve each other, becomes the main way God's presence is actually seen and felt on earth.
Okay, so if all of that is true, the sermon says it means we need to totally flip our perspective. It's a huge shift from a consumer mindset to a contributor mindset. It's about moving away from asking what we can get out of church and starting to ask who we can become through it.
And this line right here, this is pretty much the heart of the entire message. It gets repeated over and over for a reason. The whole point is that the purpose of gathering isn't about consumption, it's about transformation. It's not about finding the perfect worship band or the perfect sermon for me. It's about showing up to become part of a community where everyone is being changed together.
So you can see the difference, right? The getting mindset asks, what's in it for me? It treats church like a product to be reviewed, and honestly, the sermon says it often leaves you feeling kind of empty. But the becoming mindset,
It reframes the whole thing as a journey, where you ask, who am I meant to be, and how can I help others on their journey too?
All right, so as we start to wrap up, the message pulls all these ideas together for one last, really powerful point about why every single person's presence actually matters to the whole group.
So here it is, the big takeaway. The pastor's argument is that, yeah, you can believe in God all by yourself, but you can't fully become who you're meant to be in isolation. From this point of view, connection isn't just a nice bonus. It's the very environment where growth is supposed to happen.
And this is where the sermon really flips the script with a direct challenge. It shifts the question from, what am I getting out of this, to who is missing out because I'm not there. It's this powerful idea that your presence, your unique gifts, your part of the body, someone else actually needs it.
And so, the whole thing lands with this really clear call to action. It's basically saying, stop thinking of yourself as someone who just attends church. Instead, start seeing yourself as someone who is the church. A living, breathing, vital part of the body, showing up not just for you, but for everyone else too.
And you know what's crucial is that the sermon ends by being totally honest about the messiness of it all. It never pretends the church is perfect. In fact, it argues that its whole purpose is to be a gathering place for imperfect people, held together only by a shared hope.
And that really leaves us with this final, much bigger question, doesn't it? In a culture that puts independence on a pedestal, this message forces us to step back and ask, what is the real, lasting value of simply belonging?